What is up, guys? Welcome to my trailer breakdowns for The Flash Season 6, Episode 8, titled The Last Temptation of Barry Allen Part 2, as well as Arrow Season 8, Episode 7, titled Purgatory. These are the pre-crisis episodes. These are going to be the finales of these respective seasons. Kind of. The Last Temptation of Barry Allen Part 2 is definitely the finale to Season 6A of The Flash, and it's definitely going to be the mid-season finale overall. Purgatory, however, is the final episode before the crisis. It's the ending to the crisis setup storyline on Arrow, and while there is going to be its actual series finale, the finale of the season, Purgatory is the finale to this storyline with the Monitor and the setup for the crisis. So, in this video, I'll be breaking down the trailer for Arrow Season 8, Episode 7, titled Purgatory, and then for The Flash Season 6, Episode 8, titled The Last Temptation of Barry Allen, Part 2. If you only want to see one of the trailer breakdowns, then I'll leave timestamps in the comments down below. With that in mind, let's watch the trailer for Arrow and then break it down.
I've been fighting my fate for a long time, and I can't change it. I'm gonna save the multiverse so that my kids actually have a world to live in. There are no more stories about the Green Arrow to tell.
So the trailer begins showing Oliver walking around on Lian-Yu by himself at this point, but he walks next to the gravestones that he put there of Shadow Yao Fei and his father Robert during seasons 1 and 2 in the flashbacks, which those seasons, especially season 1's flashbacks, is what this episode will mostly be paying homage to, which is very evident in the promotional images, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. So then there's a shot of Oliver telling his children from the future, William and Mia, that he can't change his fate and that he is going to die and there's nothing he could do about it, which is what he came to. He came to that realization in the last episode as the Monitor put him in this dream world time loop thing to prove to him that he can't save Quentin, and also similarly he can't save himself. That was basically the entire premise of the last episode, the entire point of it, and this episode will most likely have like the opening scene of Oliver telling his children what we see here, that he can't change his fate. Maybe not the opening scene, but definitely one of the opening scenes. One of the first scenes in this episode will most likely be this one. It cuts then to this team-up shot of Team Arrow where we see every member that is currently on the team, except for one, all teaming up against the people that they're teaming up against, which based off the photos, we do know who they are. But from right to left on Team Arrow, we see Green Arrow, Spartan, the Earth 2 Black Canary, Wild Dog, Black Star, the Earth 1 Black Canary, Connor Hawke, and Yao Fei. Yao Fei, just like the people they're going up against, is not going to be the real Yao Fei because he is dead. It's probably either an alternate universe where Oliver never went to the island, so Yao Fei was still stuck there, and maybe even Slade was still stuck there, but Slade will not be appearing in this episode, it doesn't seem. But anyway, this is definitely not going to be the real Yao Fei, because like I said, he is dead. But I think one thing that is missing from this team-up shot, which is a really cool team-up shot, I'm really glad we're seeing a team-up shot for Team Arrow, because we really have gotten barely any of that. There is something missing here, and that's Arsenal. The question is, why is Arsenal not here? He rejoined Team Arrow in episode 5, and then wasn't in episode 6 at all, understandably, because he wouldn't really fit there. But episode 7, with Team Arrow reuniting and Team Arrow all being together, why is Arsenal not here? His red costume would also add a lot to this team-up shot, making it look a lot cooler, because there's green with Green Arrow and Spartan, and there's yellow with Black Canaries, there's blue with Wild Dog, but there's no red, and I think Arsenal being there would definitely make this whole group look a lot more colorful than they are right now. But also, I just want to see more of Arsenal. So yeah, Arsenal is confirmed to be appearing in this episode, as there are set photos of him in a plane crashing in some sort of foresty looking area. That's probably Lian-Yu, but the question is why he's not here, why the Monitor didn't bring him here, and why he's not in this team-up shot, because I think it would have been really cool to see him in this team-up shot, and if he's not here, then it would have been really cool to see him in this fight as a whole, where the Team Arrow is facing off against all these people at the same time. And then there's the question of who they're going up against here. Well, the images confirm that it is Edward Fires, Billy Wintergreen, and their whole operation, which, like I said earlier, is quite possibly this is an alternate universe Lian-Yu, where Oliver never was shipwrecked on Lian-Yu. It can't be Earth 2, obviously, because Earth 2 is destroyed. But in a universe where he was never shipwrecked, you have Yao Fei, who never escaped, Edward Fires, who was never taken down, and maybe Slade Wilson is still around here, but considering he didn't, he probably never came across House of the Mirakuru, it is possible that he is dead, and that's the reason he's not appearing, because Slade is unusable. The Warner Brothers just doesn't allow them to use him, which is ridiculous at this point. But Billy Wintergreen is appearing, which I guess if you can't use Slade, using characters like Billy Wintergreen, Grant Wilson, Joe Wilson, which is what they've been doing, is the best we can get out of the Wilson family or out of Deathstrokes, which basically all of them are called Deathstroke instead of Jericho, Ravager, and just Billy Wintergreen. But anyway, Billy Wintergreen is definitely not, I don't think, an amazing villain. He only really had like 2 or 3 lines in the entirety of the first season, so I'm not exactly hyped to see him return, but I am definitely excited to see Edward Fires back. He was a pretty good villain in season 1, and we haven't seen him at all since the flashbacks of season 1, which is understandable because he is dead. But it is cool to see this alternate universe version of the character, or some different timeline, some dream world version of the character. Honestly, at this point, it could be any number of things of where they are and how these dead people are here, but I am definitely pretty excited to see Edward Fires back. So while Team Arrow is fighting Edward Fires' men, Oliver says that he's going to save the multiverse so that his children have a place to live in it, which is definitely what the season has been about, and it's a really cool piece of dialogue, as like I said, this is the final episode before the crisis, so it's just a day away before Oliver will have to save the multiverse and die, or at least a day away before the event that kills him will begin. So it's definitely a really, really cool piece of dialogue, and what he says after that, where he says there's no more stories by the Green Arrow to tell, is also really, really great, because this is him on Lian Yu in this alternate timeline, universe, dream world, whatever it is, going up against Edward Fires with Team Arrow all teaming up, is going to be the final Oliver Queen storyline, except for the crisis and his death and whatever comes after his death. This is going to be Oliver's final non-crisis / death mission and story. So him saying that there's no more stories about the Green Arrow to tell in terms of the show is actually relatively accurate. So with the Arrow trailer out of the way, let's get into the Flash's trailer, which we will watch now, and then I'll break it down.
Ramsey's spreading his infection.
Barry?
He's gone. That's not him.
I'm not giving up on my husband.
If you go out there, you could get infected.
Flash, this isn't you.
It's everywhere.
So the trailer begins with a very horror movie looking shot of Cecile hiding behind a wall. It looks like in the CCPD where she's hiding behind the wall and hiding from someone or something. It could be one of Ramsey's blood creatures, where it seems like he's going to have an army of blood monsters in this episode, or it could be the Negative Flash, which is also very likely. But over this, Caitlin says that Ramsey's trying to spread his disease over the whole city, which I'm guessing is going to be his master plan, which is why he's using the Flash, because of using a speedster, getting to the entirety of the city and maybe even the whole world would not be very difficult. Then the trailer cuts to a shot of Iris in her house where the Flash is there as well. The Negative Flash, Iris says Barry, he turns around, it's still the Negative Flash, and it's either that he's there because the real Barry Allen is fighting against the negative part and fighting against Bloodworks' infection, and he came back here to maybe go back to his lightning rod, which would be Iris, or maybe Ramsey sent him here for a very specific reason, because Ramsey, because of the last episode, knows that Barry is the Flash, and knows that this house, which Ramsey was kind of there in Barry's mind, is obviously very important to that. But we see this shot of Negative Flash, which is just so creepy. They nailed this Negative Flash, which is something that it wasn't really like this in the comics. In the comics, the Negative Flash was Barry, infected by the Negative Speed Force, but he wasn't a mindless creature like we see here, and wasn't controlled by a villain. He was just like, he brought death wherever he went, and also he was a lot slower. This is very different, but it's definitely not worse. In fact, it's maybe a little better with how creepy and disturbing it is. For what I see so far, it's gonna work really well, and that's one thing in this episode that I'm definitely really excited for, the Negative Flash. So we see some shots of Iris and Cisco talking to each other. Iris says that she's not going to give up on her husband, while Cisco says if you go out there, you will be infected. Now, one thing that the synopsis says is that Cisco and Iris will be the main people focused on getting Barry back, trying to help him get rid of the negative part, get rid of the blood infection, while the rest of Team Flash, which it seems like it's going to be Joe, Ralph, and Caitlin, or Joe, Ralph, and Frost, will all fight these blood monsters, as Bloodwork, using the Flash, will spread his disease disease and infection throughout the city. You see even in this trailer people, regular people being infected by the blood, their fingers turning completely black, probably their mouths and their eyes, like Negative Flash, turn completely black. So Ramsey will create this army of regular people infected by Bloodwork and using this for some reason to infect the world even further. But I just think it sucks for Central City. They're gonna have like 2 days in a row where they are on the brink of destruction. This episode takes place the day before the crisis, so there's this episode where the Central City is attacked by all these blood monsters, and then the next day where Central City is about to be destroyed by a wave of antimatter. So you know, that's the rest of the city too, but it's specifically Central City where it seems like it's focused on, specifically since that's where the Flash is. So yeah, it sucks to be Central City and the people in it at this point. So the rest of the trailer doesn't really give much away, and there isn't really much to talk about. There is a shot of Joe trying to convince the Flash that he isn't himself, and a couple other shots of Ramsey and Bloodwork and members of Team Flash. Now, one thing I will say is that this episode, it's been teased that this episode won't be a typical hero versus villain episode, like finale, because this is basically the finale to this season, or the Bloodwork storyline, because most of the episode won't be about the Flash versus Bloodwork. It'll be about Team Flash trying to get the Flash back. However, then in the end of the episode, or near the end, there will be a final fight between the Flash and Bloodwork. There are some set photos of the Flash in his regular Flash costume fighting some CGI monster, which is gotta be Bloodwork, and I really hope Bloodwork's final form, which there was a hint to his final form in the last episode where you see his shadow go from very large to very small, which is what they did with Malice in Legends of Tomorrow Season 3, which this is very similar. You have this character where you don't see his final form until the last episode, but you also see the shadow, whatever, it doesn't matter. I just hope that his final form is red, because up until now, him being black, or not him himself, the blood being black was for a reason. That's the Negative Flash. If it was red, it wouldn't look like the Negative Flash, and if it was red, the design it wouldn't add anything. It would be maybe a little bit creepy, but the black definitely adds a lot more. However, I'm hoping his final form is red, like blood, and like he is in the comics, because red would just look so much cooler than just black sludge, especially since it seems like the final fight will take place at night, and if he's a completely black sludge, you won't be able to see him, which they could save some money and be on CGI there, but I'm just really hoping that from this episode onwards, or just this episode, his final Bloodwork form is completely red like the comics. Now, with this being the finale of this season, they're probably going to conclude a lot of storylines. I do think that the Iris journalist storyline will not be concluded here. It will be concluded in the second part of the season, and also the Sue Dearman storyline has been confirmed to continue into the second part of the season. However, the Nash storyline in particular is a storyline that I think definitely will be concluded in this episode, because this is the final pre-crisis episode, and Nash is a character who really only exists because of the crisis, as he's trying to hunt down or trying to prove that the Monitor is not who he says he is. But in the last episode and a couple episodes so far, we've gotten these cliffhangers at the end of a couple episodes, like Nash says that he could save Barry's life. We see these logos on the wall, the Eternium wall, and also the mention of Eternium. There's a lot of questions that kind of need to be answered either in this episode or in the crisis itself. I'm hoping there will be some answers in this episode, like Nash telling Barry how he can save him, like you mentioned a couple episodes ago, or explanation of the 7 Paragons and what these logos are. But also, speaking of the crisis, one thing that either can happen in this episode or in the first 2 episodes of the crisis is that Cisco gets his powers back, because in the 3rd episode, or at least in the 3rd episode, he will be Vibe. He probably will have his powers. He's definitely going to be wearing his costume, and that begs the question, how does he get his powers back? It could be in this episode where some desperate means he has to give it back to himself, or in the crisis, the Monitor just shows up and gives him his powers back because he's gonna need them. So anyway, those are my trailer breakdowns. In terms of which episode I'm more excited for, I do think I'm more excited for the Flash's episode, just because the last episode was so good, and I do think that Arrow this season has been great, but I just think the last episode of The Flash has been better than any episode of Arrow so far this season, so I am a little bit more excited for this episode of The Flash. But you can let me know which one you're excited, or which one you're more excited for in the comments and in the poll in the top right corner of the video. But if you like this video, make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.